Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data Dispatch in Holy Toledo. We have a ton of volatility here with a downside pressure that is still continuing in terms of a sell-off with some of the bigger tech names causing a decent drop in the broader indices in the market with a lot of uncertainty that is still around. And that is kind of, when is this whole governmental shutdown going to happen? We have uncertainty, of course, with NVDA that gets introduced today. We'll be talking about that. And then you have the whole tariff kind of uncertainty regarding, what's going to happen there from the Supreme Court. So in terms of the political atmosphere, the government, still a lot of void that the market is trying to make its way through without these big pieces of macroeconomic data that can kind of ensure confidence and help to bring liquidity into the market. We'll be talking about that, especially with Palantir, that is at a very interesting price zone. We've seen a decent sell-off from its recent earnings report, which was actually one of the best earnings for the company. And on top of that, we're seeing that with a few different companies. We'll be talking about cryptocurrency too, with Ethereum and BMNR that we've been covering recently. So if you're a new or returning viewer, hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos. We're trying to hit 30,000 by the end of the year. We possibly could do it only with your help. And follow me on X if you want more up-to-date details on the market on a daily basis. Pop it up at the screen here. Palantir closes at 175.05. So we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back in this consolidation phase that Palantir sat in for basically about 2 months between this 170 and the 187. One thing that I do like about these long bases and consolidation patterns, though, is that when you have weakness in the market or a decent amount of selling pressure, especially with kind of the recent criticisms that we've seen on Palantir, looking right at the Birdie short report, of course. A lot of people already know about that. Palantir now has a lot of support here to hopefully rely on. And that's right here at that 170. And we've seen major reversals triggered here. I mean, remember that whole October kind of 10th sell-off where we had a huge liquidity and sell-off into the markets. And then we saw that recently, October 22nd here, 170 held up all 2 or 3 of those times. So if that's tested again, I'm hoping to see a bounce there at that zone if we, see further selling pressure. But otherwise, if that does fail, that's where maybe I'll get a little more spooked on the downward trend for Palantir. However, right now in this consolidation phase, I think it's an important zone to sit in, and hopefully once the market does find its bottom, that's where Palantir can kind of resume and try to retest these near all-time highs around the 200. Currently in the overnight hours, it's down about 30 cents, so just kind of holding right here in the zone. Futures aren't moving a crazy ton right now, and speaking of Palantir, this was the biggest top indicator, I think, for the recent swing high. Kramer is saying here, taking his price target for Palantir from 200 to 250, so anybody that believes in inverse Kramer theory, I think right there is a local top indicator for the last swing high after the earnings report. I like looking at this right here from Heisenberg on X, talks about Microsoft, NVIDIA, Palantir, and Meta. You can see about 10 to 20% dips over the last 7 to 8 days, talking about this with some of the big broader tech names. And you see this especially with NVIDIA today as the United States here kind of scaled down AI chip shipments to China, talking about here selling its latest scale down AI chips. We're talking about here, it's like they're not going to be allowing NVIDIA. So there's uncertainty, of course, that happens there. And you see NVIDIA that does also experience a decent bit of a sell-off. So where that leaves the broader market, the S&P 500 is at 6720, and it's about 1.2% down, 1.12% down today. The S&P 500 is down about 3%, I think 3 to 4% from its all-time highs when it did touch over that 6,900 zone. At 6,720 here, not necessarily, I'm not too concerned quite yet. If we, for some reason, lose the 6,700, that's where you could see maybe a further pullback to about that 66. The S&P 500, though, did have a decent amount of consolidation and choppiness between that 66 and 6,700, so it could definitely get kind of stuck in that zone if the bottom is not in yet. One of the big catalysts that's kind of hanging around in terms of an anticipator for the bottom and hopefully looking for a reversal, as we're seeing a lot of individual and smaller kind of market cap names that are selling off strongly. You have here from Political a possible deal to reopen the government is close, and this is very bullish for the markets. And the reason being is because, historically, the markets really haven't been usually too affected by governmental shutdowns. However, this one is just getting very, very, very long. Historically, it's not typically this long that a governmental shutdown does last, and they can't come to an agreement. What's been happening is we're seeing kind of uncertainty and spookiness as we're seeing, of course, all these benefits that are being cut. We're seeing a lot of workers that are being furloughed. Now you're starting to see airports that are shutting down. So these are all big pieces of uncertainty that are entering into the market. There still is a hope, though, for a year-end rally once that shutdown does end and you have this current tariff situation that is resolved. We're 2 weeks away from NVDA earnings. So after hopefully we get the government reopening, we have NVIDIA that's going to be coming out with that. But then that's where everybody's hoping for liquidity to come back into the market for a possible push for end of the year targets and a rally into the end of the year. We'll see what happens. Very interesting things have been happening this year. In terms of the SPY right now, it's only down about 27 cents. So also futures are basically kind of consolidating on the day. Talking about Ethereum here, let's talk about that. Currently, ETH is at 33.50. Of course, we've seen a large sell-off when ETH lost. It's kind of supported at about that $3,800 zone. And you saw Ethereum that drops down here to about basically 3,000 on the bottom of that candle wick. I think if you look at the other charts, and is now trying to find some support at 33.46. We see a lot of bullishness in terms of the political atmosphere coming into the whole type of cryptocurrency industry. We see things from some of the big traditional finance CEOs and executives talking about how they want to get involved with crypto. So institutionally, and the institutionalization of cryptocurrency into TradFi, looking into that synergistic approach, still bullish on that towards the end of the year and even into 2026. In terms of short-term volatility here, though, I think ETH possibly and Bitcoin, the thing is that it's like you don't know if that bottom is truly in right now, because right now it's literally sitting at a very, very important support zone. Bitcoin is literally at this 100,000. It's tested it like 3 times recently. So right now at basically 102. We'll see what happens here. But I think once, like I said, you have those key catalysts and you have some of the uncertainties that get pushed behind us, that's when the bottom is going to be in. It's just how much more further, selling pressure are we going to endure? You see Kathy Wood here from ARK Invest. She's actually buying more BMNR. And you see right here, Tom Lee also continuing to accumulate BMNR, buying another 40,000 Ethereum right here for 137 million today. So where BMNR sits right now is not at the most prettiest price. I will admit, right here at 38.37, down about 305. Looking at BMNR and why that's not the prettiest price, because if we just look at some technicals here, recently in recent history, BMNR had a very strong reversal and support kind of at that 40 that was a nice accelerator to push it back up to 64 before we saw another drawdown from a swing. Right now, it's still kind of in this free fall, this falling knife, and looking for support. Hopefully, it maybe dips slightly beneath the support where it's currently at right now, and hopefully can reaccumulate and try to basically get this gap fully filled and be able to achieve some more momentum. That, of course, is going to be depending on Ethereum's price itself. If we see a little bit of buying pressure in here. One of the big things, hopefully, though, for BMNR, of course, is its native asset value. And that's kind of how much ETH do you own per share of BMNR that you have, and at these cheaper prices. And as Tom Lee continues to accumulate Ethereum, that native asset value, that native asset value, hopefully continues to improve, which can be also another support indicator. I don't know what the current native asset value is right now at this price. If you guys do know, let me know. But that's just kind of where we're currently sitting at right now. So personally, with the market down about 3% from these all-time highs, I'm not getting too uncertain yet. Usually I don't bring a lot of emotion into the market, and this is why I'm always only utilizing for more speculative stuff, sizing for 0 typically on all positions. Now, where if we look at the market right here, looking at Cypher, some of the bigger AI data center stocks, these kind of more legacy crypto mining stocks that are turning to AI data centers, are starting to show some resiliency, at least, Cypher right here, down about 12% of the day. But I mean, in these recent kind of testing, kind of brought back to these recent all-time highs here at the 21s right now, holding some decent actual support there. So we'll see what happens with more of these bigger names. But it's all about a half for you guys. What do you guys think is going to happen from here? Do you think we're near the bottom? Do you think we've endured enough pain this week? Or do you think there's still more room for shaking out and selling pressure? Peace out, take care, and I'll catch you guys later.